Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I wanted to talk today about hip hop. Everybody knows that I love hip hop music. You know that I follow all the rappers, even the ones that I don't like. And people say, "Well, Boyce, why do you listen to that music? If you're against it, why would you listen to music that you're against?" And I say, "Well, because I like to understand things if I'm going to critique them, and so in order to really understand." The impact that certain kinds of music might have on our children, particularly violent music, music that promotes and glorifies the use of drugs and alcohol, things like that. I wanted to talk to a real psychologist. I'm kind of an armchair psychologist, but Dr. Monikah Ogando, who's on the air with me right now, is a real psychologist. She actually has two PhDs, you all. Now, that's
Okay.
two. That's really hard to do. And she's super smart. She's also spiritually inclined. So she understands not just the psychology, but also the spiritual implications of shaping who you are, how you shape your children, and things like that. And first, I want to ask Dr. Ogando, how are you doing today?
I am wonderful. Thanks for having me today.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing well, and I know that you have a conference coming up. I want everybody to know about that.
Hmm.
You're doing a conference called Flourish, or is it
Yes,
Flourish or Flourish Live? I know the website's Flourish Live, right?
Flourish Live is the website, flourishlive.com. It's called Flourish Conference for Women in Leadership, and
Ah,
it's particularly targeting women executives and entrepreneurs who are looking for that next level of success and want the tools and the strategies to get there.
mm.
So there's going to be some mentoring and there's going to be some coaching, hot seat coaching. It's a one-day workshop like you've never seen before.
Wow. Well, I'm going to put a link to that so that people can sign up right here with this video. And
Awesome.
if I don't have the link in here, please in the comments let me know what I did or did not include.
Hmm.
But speaking of mentoring,
Yes.
we know the importance of mentorship and guiding young people to see the world in the right way, to believe in the possibilities that can exist with the right attitude, and to be in situations where they're going to be happy and successful as opposed to dead in jail, etc. So when you hear, I sent you this song by Lil Wayne,
Hmm.
where he actually shows tremendous lyrical brilliance in the song. Believe it or not, I mean, I'm a hip hop enthusiast, so I listen to the cadence, and I mean, he's a great rapper, but the lyrics are a little bit disturbing. The song, in case anybody ever wants to go listen to it, is called "Gun Walk," and in the song, literally, he's talking repeatedly about carrying a gun. F the gun laws. If I see you in the street, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna put a toe tag on you. And every time he's saying nigga, I'm gonna kill that nigga, shoot that nigga, beat that nigga, etc. And I sent that to you, and I didn't mean to shock you. I don't know if you'd seen those lyrics before, but
I
I
had not.
right. I imagine, and, for people who aren't familiar with it, it can be like whoa. And
Hmm.
and I sent this to you as a psychologist because I said, look, I want you to see the raw form of this, and imagine, say, a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid going to school every day with this in his headphones, hearing it over and over again. How does this affect him psychologically? You're an expert on this. I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Well, I told you when you sent this to me that you're talking about two of my favorite things, the mind and music. And music is such a powerful carrier for consciousness. And it's kind of like water in the sense, whatever you put into water, water makes it easy to digest and easy to consume.
Mm,
So that's why you put herbs in water and you make it tea. You put grounds in it and you call it coffee, etc. So it's easy to deliver drugs with water, and it's the same thing. It's easy to deliver consciousness through music. And so I like you, I love acronyms, and so I always talk about music heals, Heals,
mm,
and the H stands because it influences those. Heals, right? So it enhances or it informs or impacts five areas of our lives. Um, Music enhances or informs health. You've heard of people who are going to, when you go to the dentist, for example, it's really subtle. Sometimes you don't even notice it, but when you go to the dentist, you go to the chiropractor, you go to your surgeon's office, they typically have Baroque music playing. Um, Baroque music calms the parasympathetic system, and so it makes you less nervous. It makes you more conducive to new things, etc. So music informs health or healing. Music also enhances or informs execution. That's why when you want to be focused, when you want to be concentrating, when you want to be like productive, there's a particular kind of music that you want to listen to that will help you be productive and focused. And then there's music that will not help you be productive and focused.
Mm.
The music also enhances attitude. And so there's some music that makes you angry. You know, like the music that I listen to when I go to the gym to knock it out and be a beast and to be a warrior. That's very different music than what I listen to when I want to get into a vulnerable, open, emotional space. This is also true. I do a lot of trainings. And so music informs each one of those exercises. I actually spend a day when I'm preparing to deliver a training. I actually spend a complete day just going through the curriculum and figuring out what music goes where so that I can enhance the emotional outcome that I want. Music also enhances learning. And so there are scientific studies that show a distinct relationship between improved learning capability and music. One study conducted by the University of California at Irvine showed that preschool-aged children who received daily lessons for either playing a musical instrument or singing were significantly better able to complete a puzzle than those who didn't receive training. So this isn't just about direct learning; it's also abstract. You know, problem solving, testing your observations, abstract reasoning, jumping to conclusions, analyzing and evaluating ideas. All of those things are a higher level of learning than just 2 plus 2 equals 4. And speaking of that, music also enhances and informs, I'll call it systems, but what I mean is just really like the overall gestaltic approach of your life. You know, it's about your health, it's about your execution, it's about attitude, it's about learning, it's about relationships too. So to your point, you know, when a child is listening to a particular genre of music over and over and over again, there's a reason why there are certain genres that use a particular cadence, a particular bass line, particular instrumentation. There are certain notes that speak to despair, that speak to hope. All of that musicality has a direct link to how we approach the world from an emotional and mental standpoint. So when you're listening to something over and over again, it's not so much the music that's doing it, it's the repetition. Because I could listen to that song from Lil Wayne that you sent to me, and I'm not going to go out there and kill anybody. But if you listen to it 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 times, or something like it, then what you're doing is you're indoctrinating your mind into looking at the world a particular way. And you're using music to deliver a certain level of consciousness into your own paradigm reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm taking notes. I'm a student in your class. So you said that the music indoctrinates you. I mean, indoctrinate to me is just such a powerful phrase, right? Because you just think about the ways that indoctrination have been used to harm people. I mean, Hitler indoctrinated people into a way of thinking about the world, thinking about Jews, etc. And in fact, I remember him saying that the way to control the future is to control the minds of the youth.
Yes.
And so when you look at what's happening really in hip hop music, and I don't know how closely you followed the music. You don't come off as a person who listens to a lot of Lil Wayne, but then again, I'm just speculating here. I mean, then again, I
For
don't come.
scientific purposes.
Right. If you see what's kind of happened with the music, where so many people are just so frustrated that hip hop, which was a powerful psychological tool to indoctrinate people to empowerment initially, right? You had songs that encouraged kids to learn. You had songs that encouraged young people to vote. You had songs
Mm-hmm.
that encouraged people to fight against racism. And then now,
Fighting self-destruction.
right, self-destruction. You're headed for
Yeah.
self-destruction. Right. And people still remember that, right? And then it's just sort of flipped on its head, and now that sort of message is extremely rare. Most of the time, you see messages that push kind of this, this kind of, I guess, thuggish kind of
Mm-hmm.
culture, maybe a little irresponsible, whether it's sexually irresponsible, financially irresponsible. And when you talk about that particular example with Lil Wayne in the song "Gunwalk,"
Mm-hmm.
and where he's literally talking repeatedly in every verse about the things he would do with his gun. And in other songs, he's not the only one. I mean, other artists
Mm-hmm.
emulate him because he makes the most money. BET glorifies him by giving him awards and recognition. And it's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle because everybody's enjoying the party, but my argument has always been that we cannot be a people who are singing and dancing to the tune of our own genocide, our own self-destruction. I live on the south side of Chicago, and I know a lot. I see a lot of kids who live in neighborhoods where it's easier for them to get a gun than it is for them to get an education or to get a
Well,
job, right?
yes, but
So if you're hearing a song like that, right? You're 10 years, 11 years old. Every day you're hearing "shoot that nigga, kill that nigga," put a toe tag on that nigga, and then somebody says, "Oh, here's a gun for you," and then let's say that you get into a dispute with somebody who also has a gun, then what are you going to lean on? You're going to lean on the mindset that you've been indoctrinated into, which is shoot that nigga, kill that nigga, put a toe tag on that nigga, and then what's the outcome? Well, I have a relative who works in the coroner's office, and she says that in Chicago, she works in the city of Chicago in the coroner's office,
mm-hmm.
and she says
Mm-hmm.
that about 90% of her gunshot victims are black and brown males between the ages of 15 and 27.
Mm-hmm.
And she also says, a lot of them you can tell maybe they were living a certain life. They had all the tattoos and the gang tattoos and whatever. And it just seems that the glorification of this culture just can't be good for people. So
but
what are
listen,
your thoughts on that?
yeah, listen. It's not so much what people are doing or what is being put out there, because this system is going to do what the system's going to do. The impactful thing here is that no matter what comes down the pike, do you have people in your corner that help you to think critically about these things? Because if you are growing up in an environment where this music is happening and somebody sits you down and says, "What do you think about that? What do you think is the point that he's trying to make? Why do you think that he goes to a gun instead of actually speaking about it with his brother or whoever it is that made him angry? What do you think he's mad about?" If you actually have those kinds of conversations about that music, then you're not making the music wrong, because the music is just going to do what it does. The reason it's popular is because it makes money. If you stop buying it, trust me, they will start singing something else. And so, it's not so much about what it is, it's how we relate to it. And I grew up in a household where everything was a question. My father never, ever, ever, do you understand that never, ever defined a word for me? Every time that I asked, what does so-and-so mean? He says, look it up. It got to the point where it was like, as soon as I had the question, I looked at him, I was like, never mind, because he's not going to tell me. So I learned very early in life to seek answers. When I have a question, go look it up. And it wasn't hidden. It wasn't unavailable. It wasn't a cult. It wasn't anything like that. It was like, if you have a question, first question things. And second, when you do have a question, go look for the answer. The answer's out there. And so to not have that context, to not have an environment of that, where you're listening to something and nobody's helping you process information, nobody's helping you question things, nobody's helping you to understand that there's a different way to look at things, they're just nodding along like zombies right next to you, then that's what causes the automatic responses. Because human beings are designed to make choices. And when you do not have awareness, you cannot make a choice. You're just automatic. It's like an animal. An animal doesn't have awarenesses like that. It just has instinct. And so when you do not use your human mind to question things, to catalyze things, to ask questions, to be a critical thinker, then you just revert back to instinct. And the instinct is, I hear this over and over and over again. I have been hypnotized into thinking that I have to defend or protect my turf or protect my thing, and this means disrespect, or this means betrayal, and this means this, and this means that. When you are confronted with a conflict, then you just drop back into what you know. There's nothing in you that questions it. There's nothing in you that gives you pause, because you haven't been trained that way. So this isn't so much about, I'm not at all maligning the music, because I'm at choice, and I can say I choose not to listen to that. That's not the kind of world that I want to live in, and that's not the perspective that I choose to adopt. But a 10-year-old doesn't have that level of awareness. And they rely on teachers and parents and older mentors and big brothers and big sisters to provide that level of guidance. And if that's not available, then yeah, they're going to start, they'll accept the gun. So, when I was little, you could be smoking something right in front of my face, and there's nothing in me that said that looked interesting. But that's because I had a different outlook. You know, it's like there are other things that are more compelling. But when you don't see any alternatives, and that is all you see, then yeah, that's automatically what the default that you're going to fall into.
You know, that's interesting. You mentioned, you said something that really got my attention when you told the story about your dad. And really, I guess the operative word there is father. And you see that in the black community, fathers are just not in the home anymore. It's not necessarily by choice. I link this to the growth in the prison population. And so when you talk about the intervention that your dad did, where he taught you certain things at an early age that would allow you to make good choices, what's so unfortunate, and I'm not even necessarily sure how I would shape this as a question. It's really more so a thought. What's so unfortunate is that you have so many households that lack that structure. Not only is there just one parent, but that parent is working 12, 13 hours a day. So you've got young people kind of raising themselves, almost like Lord of the Flies or something. And it becomes this very scary thing that you see, again, where I can just go a few blocks from my house, a couple of blocks, and there a young black man being murdered is not a big deal. It's not something that's gonna make the headline of the local news because it happens so often. And so what's so interesting is that it's difficult to balance between our understanding that there are structural concerns that have created the environment within which this music arose versus corporate interests that are now profiting from the promotion of the very worst that this environment has to offer, right? And so, and the other interesting word that you used that I thought that really got my attention, and I love to hear you talk more about this. You said the word hypnotize. Now there are some people who say that I heard another psychologist once make that point that music being played to a certain cadence of a certain beat repetitively, it opens up your subconscious and makes it vulnerable to suggestion.
Yes.
It sounded like he was talking about hypnosis. Can you
Yes.
talk more about that and just what you know on that particular issue?
Yeah, well, I mentioned it briefly earlier. I was talking about there are certain notes that, for example, the minor scale speaks to or touches on the, I'll say, darker emotions. So sadness, grief, despair, anger, etc. Whenever you hear, for example, a Negro spiritual, it typically has some notes in the minor scale because it speaks to sadness and longing, etc. Whenever you hear even angry rock songs, you know, those are on the minor scale as well. And that's deliberate because that triggers a certain emotional response in the brain. And when you're listening to something over and over and over again, you are, in effect, hypnotizing yourself. That's why, for example, any professional athlete, when they go to work out, they listen to particular songs when they go to the gym. They listen to particular songs when they're about to perform. I promise you, Floyd Mayweather has a playlist when he goes to beat somebody's butt. You know? And it's the same thing whether you're riding the bike, you know, a treadmill or doing a 5K or a 10K. You use music to support whatever it is that you're up to. That's the same thing with learning, focus and concentration and productivity. And so when you have music that hits particular notes in a particular cadence, there's music that's fast tempo, mid-tempo, slow tempo, that's on purpose. And the words are also part of that spell. And I say that deliberately because spelling is part of spell making, you know? And so when you're using those words, it's also why, let me say this, because this is something that I learned as I was learning different languages. When you listen to a particular song in a particular language, it has a completely different effect than that same song with the same melody and the same notes, but you hear it in English. It's very different than when you hear it in Spanish. If you understand both languages, it just hits you differently because the words are part of the magic, as it were. And so I don't think that people understand how powerful words are. And it's, we have this bully movement and anti-bullying and words hurt and this and that. And it's like, you have no idea that, I mean, the word abracadabra is actually Sanskrit for I create as I speak. So it wasn't about magic. It wasn't about rallying up some unseen force, although it was. But the mechanism to do that was the words that you're using. So it's the same thing with music. And it's also one of the reasons why in the earlier days of popular music, and I'm talking about like the 16th and the 17th century when music actually became, it didn't become, but it became popular as a social structure. So you would go to parties and there would be music, etc. And that's why it was instrumental. Because people understood that I don't want to mess it up with words on it. You know what I mean? There's a particular thing that I'm trying to get to here. And so I'll use the music because that in itself is a strong enough delivery mechanism. When I put words in it, I am concentrating that effect. And so now you have chanting. The Eastern traditions are very well aware of the power of chanting and mantras as a way to effect a different consciousness. And that's exactly what music does. When you start singing something over and over and over again, you are in effect indoctrinating yourself with that message. And if what you're hearing is gospel music, we shall overcome, that's a very different consciousness than shoot that nigga, blah, 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 whatever you said that the words were. But it's the same effect. It's the same process. It's the same principle. That repetition and using music and words as a mechanism to indoctrinate yourself and to hypnotize yourself into a different level of consciousness. All you're doing ever is managing orientation.
Wow, that is that's phenomenal. And I'm going to shut us down because I've taken up so much of your time. But I'm so appreciative of the fact that you've loaned your expertise to your community to help us all understand how to best prepare our children for a chance to succeed. My argument is that unfortunately we live in a country where every black male, when he is born, there are two things that are built for him. One is a prison cell, the other one is a casket. And if you do not guide children, and these don't have to be your children, these can be somebody else's children, if you don't guide them to a different path, society has a path planned for them. And I don't know where the heck this crazy music comes from. I don't know why corporations are allowed to necessarily promote the very worst for our children, but yet everyone else gets the best or everyone else gets something different.
Well, you know why.
Well, yeah, I think, we know why, but I'm not going to push too many of my Boyce Watkins conspiracy theories here. I want you to have the chance to be a scientist. This is all about you, Dr. Ogando. But people know what I think. But let me just, I'm gonna just as a tribute to the brilliance of Lil Wayne, and I don't say that as a joke. He is a brilliant man. I just want him to. I would love for him to use his powers for good rather than evil, and I don't know if that's going to happen. But I'll just recite the first verse so people can hear the kind of music that our kids are getting on the radio. Even if you tell your kids not to listen to it, their friends are listening to it. Even if you're raising them right, there are a lot of kids who aren't being raised at all. So we're all in this together. We're all affected. Even if we're protecting our own children, there are other children not being protected, and those children, unfortunately, can end up hurting and affecting your children. Or influencing your children. So basically, and excuse my French, you might want to cover your ears for this, Dr. Ogando.
Okay.
But I keep it raw. Let's see. I'll just read it. I won't try to rap it. It says, "Fuck that nigga, hoe ass nigga. Leave that nigga with a toe tag nigga. Barrel so long you can pole dance nigga. Run up in your house where the dope at nigga." Talking about selling drugs. Murder she wrote on a notepad nigga. Light that nigga up, smoke that nigga, stomp that nigga, roast that nigga. I'm walking around with this shotgun and this bitch bigger than me nigga. Don't open up your fucking mouth cause I'll pull the trigger like teeth nigga. Shoot 'em up, then leave nigga. I smell summer's eve nigga. We shoot first, it's better to give than to receive nigga. So you imagine a kid repeating this every single day. Hundreds of thousands of kids. And what this does to them psychologically. And one of the reasons I take serious issue with the network that I call it Negro Entertainment Television, BET. It's Black Entertainment Television, but I take issue with the fact that that networks like this are so concerned with making money that they're not thinking about the toxic waste that they're literally sprinkling on the black community. Now, someone was recently shot at a party that was linked to the BET Awards, and I think that's the closest that this violence has ever gotten to them. And what I speculate is that there are many people who make money from the culture by destroying the culture who are not affected by the negative implications of what they're promoting. So their children aren't being shot, so they don't care. Their children aren't getting addicted to drugs, they don't care. Their kids aren't going to prison, so they don't care. Their kids are going to private schools. And I think that it's up to every conscientious person in America who understands the damage this is doing to speak up. You can't just sit here quietly and let someone destroy your kids. We have an obligation to protect all of our kids from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. That means that if we have to take on other black people, then so be it. So that's my position on it, Dr. Ogando. I'm pretty much done, but you know what? Since you're the guest, I'll let you get the last word, and then I promise I'll stop talking.
Well, I'm really interested in a what's next conversation. I'm really interested in giving people practical tools and practical next steps that they can use. It's like, okay, so if they've never heard this conversation and they're just now being educated about the impact and the influence that music has and the effect that music has, now what? So 3 things that you can do is to, number 1, when you're listening to music, just check in with your body. Your experience has 3 dimensions: your thoughts, your feelings, and your physical reactions. And so when you are listening to a particular song, check in. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And what are you sensing in your body? Is your stomach in knots? Are your shoulders tense? Are you feeling angry, amped up? Are you feeling like you're gonna do something? And what are your thoughts? Are you thinking frustrated, angry, hurtful thoughts? When you just the act of self-observation is pause enough to shift the influence of whatever negativity may be in music. And so that's step 1, would be to just check in with yourself on a thinking, feeling, and sensing level. And 2 is to have those conversations. If you're not prepared to have them with your children yet because you don't have the words, then run it with friends or colleagues. Sometimes just talking it out helps you to get your own articulation and your own position about it. Sometimes I don't know where I stand until I start talking about something that I've never talked about before. So those are useful conversations to have to investigate where I stand in something. And then the third and the most important is, after you check in with yourself and after you've tested out your own position, then have those conversations with your children, but in a way of having a conversation, as opposed to lecturing or as opposed to imposing your own will and your own opinions. Because then what's going to happen is they're just going to go do whatever it is that they're going to do. They just won't tell you about it. So, but if you have a conversation, then at least you'll be able to find out where your child stands. I have been surprised and impressed by the natural wisdom that children have and the natural, self-regulating mechanisms that they come with. It's like, whoever manufactured you, they had a better idea of what makes you work than I do. So I'll just observe it and then just help you steward it. So those would be the 3 things that I would leave the audience with, so that it's not just a frustrating, this is bad conversation, but now you can actually do something about it.
Well, that is really awesome advice, and I am so grateful for you taking the time to kind of, first of all, not just bring your expertise to the table, but also patiently allowing me to continuously rant on the issue that I've been talking about for years. I'm the crazy man out in the woods on this thing. I've got more enemies than friends. I've lost opportunities because of this, but I'm going to fight this until I die. Because we got to protect our kids. And so thank you so much, Dr. Ogando. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And everybody, you got to go check out our website. If you appreciate all that Dr. Ogando has brought to the table as much as I do, I encourage you to go to her website, flourishlive.com. That's flourishlive.com. And you got to sign up for a conference or one of her events, because she's always this wise, always this brilliant, and every time I talk to her, I learn something, and I'm just happy she doesn't bill me for getting a chance to talk to her. Thank you all for checking this out. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.